Mr. Schatzline in opposition to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm going to make this very brief. This bill is an effort to appease school board members. If you are in favor of lowering property taxes and not raising property taxes, and if you are in favor of fighting for the taxpayer, you're going to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Little in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I think it's important to understand what you're about to vote on. Recently, Tarrant Appraisal District did something that, to my knowledge, in the state of Texas was unprecedented. Their elected board of directors decided, as a matter of policy, to reappraise residential homestead property every third year. This bill will prevent that in Tarrant, and it will prevent it in your district. If your elected board of directors of your appraisal district decide that they want to implement the same plan and not reappraise your house or your voters' houses every single year, they will be barred by this bill. Let me say that again. If you vote for this bill, everyone who votes for you will have their residential homestead values climb every single year as a matter of course. Thank you.
Mr. Harrison in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill is so incredibly misguided. Our local government officials should have the ability, as they currently have under state law, to determine for themselves whether they do these appraisals every 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. I actually did fully support the amendment by David Lowe, and am profoundly disappointed to see that it was the objection to it was sustained, which would have actually required it to go to 3 years, because our homeowners, not only are they already being taxed out of their homes, they need stability, and they need, quite frankly, we need as a state more transparency on the people that are actually increasing their taxes, which is the local taxing entities, because what's happening is appraised values are going up every year. The taxing entities are able to lower the tax rate and therefore pretend to be lowering the tax burden when in fact, because they're lowering the rate but not enough, they are effectively increasing taxes year over year. So we should be creating more stability in the system. We should be giving the control to our local governments to have longer intervals between the assessments, and we should be creating more transparency on who is the actual proximate cause of our taxpayers' property tax bills going up every year. This bill does the opposite of all of those things.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Canales, for what
would the
purpose?
gentleman yield?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Absolutely.
When you say more stability,
Yeah.
that means not having to go protest your taxes every single year. Is that correct?
I actually think it's on both sides, absolutely, but it also would be more a stability for the local governments. They would know what that number is, because right now what determines people's property taxes is assessed value times the rate equals the yield. It would give more stability to the taxing entities, but to the individuals, the hardworking men and women of the state of Texas, they should not have to go make an annual pilgrimage to beg for mercy from their local appraisal districts every year like they're having to do right now.
And so this is the first time ever that there's an elected portion of the body, the appraisal district, and in this county, they actually moved to give people this reprieve for 3 years. And so what we're looking at doing right now is saying for the first time ever that an elected body has representation, we're going to strip them of it.
Yeah, isn't that really interesting, Representative Canales, that right after this legislature gave the people more democratic power to have their voice heard and their voice represented on the appraisal districts, the very next session the body is apparently, if we pass this thing, going to turn around and strip that power from the locally elected officials that we just empowered 2 years ago.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Turner to close on the bill. Mr. Guerin in favor of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. The current system, the school districts or the appraisal districts have to stay within a certain percent of the comptroller's values. If not, then school districts are penalized. Also, if you're out of line with the comptroller, at some point, and this has happened in Tarrant County before, you have to make adjustments to those values. And when you make those adjustments, it's a huge increase. This way, it is spread out over the period instead of just one big jump at 3 years, or a much larger jump if the comptroller says you're out and you have to make a correction. And that has happened at least twice since I've been serving here in Tarrant County. I would urge you to vote yes on this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Turner to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to make a few points to finish this conversation. First off, I want to thank all the members who've given me a few minutes at their desks as I've come by and talked to you about this over the last couple of days and why it's so important for my community, for my school districts. You know, a few weeks ago, we passed out of this House overwhelmingly, nearly unanimously, House Bill 2, which is, I'm confident and optimistic, is still going to pass and become law, which is going to provide much needed funding for our public schools. I want to thank Chairman Buckley for his leadership on that once again. But things like what we're talking about today erode the progress we can and should make with House Bill 2, because our school districts are really the innocent bystander, the innocent victim in all this. They don't set appraisal district policy, but they are bound by state law. And state law says the comptroller will do the property value study, not to mention 3 other value studies, and that data goes to the Texas Education Agency. The TEA has no choice. Again, by state law, they have to claw back funding to our school districts if the comptroller certifies that the appraised values in a given appraisal district are less than what they should be. And that's the problem that I'm trying to solve with this bill. Nothing more and nothing less. And again,
Speaker.
this affects, I'll be happy to yield in a couple minutes, but let me finish my remarks here. You know, Representative DeRazio and Representative Martinez-Fisher and others from the Bexar County delegation brought a really good amendment a few minutes ago that I was happy to accept, because I do hear those of you, Mr. Morgan brought this up, you know, some of these elected board members across the state in our larger counties are making some good policy decisions to help the taxpayer, to benefit the taxpayer. I've looked at the Bexar County policy, and I think it's a good policy. I think it makes sense. And so I don't think our bill touched their policy to begin with, but I was happy to take the amendment that Mr. DeRazio had drafted, and he came to see me about on Saturday, which I very much appreciated, him and Mr. LaHood, and talk about, hey, let's make sure this doesn't affect this pro-taxpayer policy that the Bexar County Appraisal District has adopted. So I want to thank them for working with me and bringing me that amendment, and I was proud to put it on the bill. Secondly, let me just say that I want to thank some of the business organizations like Texas Taxpayers Research Association and others who have helped us craft this legislation. This has been done in consultation with the business community and with the Comptroller's Office to make sure we're getting the very, very best policy. Thank you to Chairman Guerin for joint authoring the bill. If you're pro-pub ed, you do not want this happening in your county. And so, additionally, if your county is appraising every year, it is unfair to your taxpayers, to your constituents, that another county is not, because of the way the school finance formulas work. So this is a win-win for everybody, and I would ask for your favorable consideration. I'd be happy to yield for questions.
Mr. Tinderholt, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for
Will the
questions?
gentleman yield for questions? The gentleman yields.
Yes.
Thank you, and I apologize for the interruption. I thought you were finishing
No, it's
earlier,
okay.
so I apologize. Is it true? I think I heard you mention that you wanted continuity and consistency across the state. Is that kind of part of the reason for this?
That's right, with the important caveat that this only applies to the 50 largest counties, population 75,000 or more. This does not affect smaller counties.
So was Bexar County exempted during this process?
No, it wasn't. Thank you for asking that. They're not exempted, not at all. Bexar County has a policy that I've learned a lot about over the last couple days that says that if a property owner protests their appraisal and they are successful and they achieve a reduction in value, then that reduced value will hold for the following tax year. Okay? And I don't think our bill affected that policy, but the amendment is kind of a belt and suspenders effort to make sure it doesn't, and I'm happy to accept it. I think it's a policy that clearly is working well in Bexar County, and to my knowledge, the school districts in Bexar County have raised none of the concerns that we've heard from school districts in our area.
So a lot of members may not know, we're both from Tarrant County.
Yes.
And I want to mention that I was just talking to the county tax assessor. You made a statement earlier that may have implied that the Tarrant County doesn't do these every year. Tarrant County has indeed done an assessment every year. They just haven't done 2025 yet, and they're not saying they're not going to. They just said they haven't completed it yet. So I wanted to clear that up. Are you aware that they've done one every year?
Well, I know they're sending a notice every year because I got one myself a few weeks ago. But their policy says they reappraise every other year. That is their appraisal plan that I've got here somewhere in this packet. That they appraise every other year for right. Initially, it was going to be every 3 years, and then they made it every other year.
I just wanted to come up and say that I talked to the assessor. He said that they do indeed appraise every year, and he didn't say that 2025 is off the table. So,
Okay.
But thank you. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, Representative.
Ms. Kerwin, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes.
The gentleman yields.
Are you familiar with Johnson County Central Appraisal?
A little bit.
District And what they did this
A little
last
bit.
year? Well, when I was campaigning, knocking on doors, there were so many citizens in my district that were being taxed out of their homes, seniors moving into RV parks, and unequitable appraisals, that the citizens took the CAD on, and they actually now have 8 CAD board members that have been elected by their citizens and their taxing entities. The taxes got so high, they did a 10% cap on homestead, and they're still going to increase taxes by 10%. We needed relief in District 58. The citizens made the decision to take it on. The CAD board's fully elected now, and at least for the next 3 years, our citizens will get a break on paying their taxes. So I recommend other counties looking into this, and it's
Okay.
Question?
I thought you were asking me a question, but let me respond to Representative Kerwin
Okay.
because we had a hearing on one of your bills a few weeks ago, and we had a lot of those members that you're speaking of come up and speak to the committee.
Yes.
Which I very much appreciate. As I told you on that day, I appreciate how engaged your community is in the legislative process and their passion for this issue. And I respect what the good work that are doing in Johnson County. I would just submit to you that when it comes to tax rates and tax burden, and taxes are too high. And that's why this legislature has passed billions of dollars in property tax relief in the last session, which I was proud to support, and we'll do so again in this session. I'm confident that we're going to do that. But between the legislature, the city council, the commissioner's court, the school board, and other taxing jurisdictions, that responsibility rests with them. It is unfair to put that responsibility on appraisal district board members because that is statutorily, that is not their job. That is not their job to do. It's wrong of us to put that pressure on them. It's unfair to them, frankly, and it's unfair to the taxpayers because that kind of allows elected officials to hide the ball and say, well, it's your appraisals. No, it's the people who set the tax rates. It's the people who set the tax rates that determine what people pay in property taxes. And so it is unfair to the taxpayer and frankly to the appraisal district board members to put that heat on them, and this is a way of taking that heat off of them.
I understand that, but for once, it was transparent over all the years that their taxes kept going up and up and up. This will give them a reprieve to get their feet on the ground, stay in their homes, while the county can maybe readdress this in another 2 years. Okay. But they needed that, and they're very thankful for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Mr. Gates, for what purpose?
Gentlemen, to yield for a few
Will
questions.
the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes, I yield.
Gentleman yields.
Okay, I'm trying to catch in between all this. I thought it was under state law you had to do it every year.
Well, Mr. Gates, you're exactly right. You do. Under Section 2301 of the tax code, that is exactly what it says. All property is appraised at market value as of January 1st each year.
Okay,
That's what it
so
says.
when they do it, you said every 3 years?
Every other year.
Every other year. How many counties are doing this?
To my knowledge, just two. Ms. Kerwin's county, Johnson County that we just discussed, and Tarrant County.
Okay, let's assume under the state school funding program, we fund, let's say, $12,000 per student throughout the state of Texas. You with me on that?
Roughly, yeah, right.
And let's say you collect 50% from your local.
Sure.
Then that means the state has to make up that other 50%. In this
Correct.
example, that would be 6,000.
That's correct.
Now, if you don't praise till every other year, then it's possible that you're not collecting as much as you should.
That's right.
You follow me?
Yes.
So then that means the state's going to have to pick up a larger amount. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. So what?
Okay, wait, here, let me finish the next
Yeah,
question.
sure.
So that extra amount comes from the state, and the state collects their money from every constituent, from every member in this building, don't they?
They sure do.
Through sales tax, franchise tax. So
Yes.
my constituents are having to pay more in sales tax and franchise tax to make up for the fact that you got 1 or 2 counties that are not playing the game the way they should?
Bingo. You hit the nail on the head,
Okay,
Representative
thank you.
Gates. You're exactly right. That was the exact point I was making with Representative Little. So it's unfair to your constituents when this happens. It's unfair to the school districts I
Mr.
represent
Speaker,
when
will
this
the gentleman
happens.
yield?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Of course.
The
Yes.
gentleman yields.
Mr. Guerin earlier spoke and said that this is a way of easing the tax burden on people because it wouldn't lead to one big tax increase every 2 or 3 years. Did he not?
I believe so.
What's
yes.
the point? Why did he say that?
You'd have to ask Mr. Guerin
Well,
why he
the
said
point
that.
is that he's trying to make a point that the tax burden is more about what happens at the appraisal level than
Well,
it is
there's-
the people
there's-
that actually set the
There's
rate.
two
Isn't that
elements
correct?
there. There's 2 elements there, Mr. Toth. So one, when market values are increasing, as they do sometimes, then yes, you'll have a really sharp sticker shock.
But
after
at
2
the end
years.
of the day,
But
this is about
let me-
it's not
let me
it's
finish-
about it's about the tax rate.
Let me
isn't it?
finish. Let me finish my answer.
And the fact
Mr.
that
Toth.
they get to hide behind the appraisal districts.
So, Mr. Toth, in a declining market, which some counties in our state are in a declining real estate market right now.
That wasn't
So-
Mr. Guerin's point, though. Mr. Guerin's
Well,
point was that it would ease the burden to
I'm
do
gonna-
this yearly on people, and that they wouldn't see a massive tax increase once every 2 years. And Mr. Turner, we know what's going on here. We know that the people that we elect up to the courts are hiding behind the appraisal districts. They get to say that, hey, your tax rate went down when in fact the effective
You mean the
rate went up.
commissioner's court? Or you said courts?
The courts, commissioners' courts.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understand.
Or
what you're talking
ISDs, or hospital districts, or
about. Yes, that's part of my point.
But they're hiding behind these appraisal
politicians,
districts.
Mr. Toth, politicians, whether they're at the local level or here in this chamber, should not blame the appraisal district for the tax rates that the taxing jurisdictions set. The taxing jurisdictions set the tax rates. That's the school district. That's the city. That's the county. That is the legislature indirectly through school finance formulas.
The point,
we,
though,
we set the tax
point-
rates. So don't blame the appraisal district for tax rates that the appraisal district has nothing to do with setting.
The point, though, is that if we do this on an annual basis, it enables them to hide behind the appraisal districts, and that's what they're doing right now.
Well, I disagree on that. I think that I think we need to provide clarity and consistency for appraisal districts, which again, more than 90% of them are already doing this. Thank you, members, for the time today. This is about supporting our public schools. This is about consistency and fairness for the taxpayer, and I move passage.
Please excuse Representative Hunter to attend a meeting of the Committee on Calendars on a motion of Mr. Metcalf. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Question occurs on passage to engrossment of House Bill 2786. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Jones of Harris voting aye. Show Mr. Turner voting aye. Show Mr. Schatzline voting nay. Show Mr. Meyer voting aye. Have all voted. There being 76 ayes, 52 nays, House Bill 2786 is passed to engrossment. Mr. Harrison, for what